Almost there. Perfect. Welcome back to Boss Uncaged podcast. So this episode is going to be highly interesting because Marcus and I were having a conversation offline talking about, he talks to stages. He's usually not surprised when he's in these types of environments, but those that listen to the show know that I do my due diligence to the point to where I probably know Marcus better than some of his family members do. So with that being said, I'm going to give Marcus his nickname, right? I'm going to give him his nickname. His nickname today is going to be the Titan YouTube Boss. So I want you to kind of tell the audience a little bit more about you and what would you like to talk about today?
So basically, about me. Well, I'm an entrepreneur. I've been running my own business with a business partner of mine, Ben Jones, since 2000 and late 2018, somewhere around there. Before I started Titan Marketer, basically, I was an industrial electrician. And I busted my knee. I did that for about a decade. And then I was at a trampoline, like indoor trampoline arena / death trap of a place. And I was jumping. I forgot I wasn't 13 anymore, And so I was jumping from one trampoline to another trampoline with my son, and my right knee went to go dislocate. And my ACL got cut in half. My MCL came off. My PCL got damaged. My meniscus got damaged. Like, I just did a proper job. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't work anymore. I couldn't do my electrical work anymore. But I still had to, I got a family of 4. So I got 4 kids, right? Family of 6. And I still need to put food on the table. So I've been dabbling into advertising and marketing and conversion and sales and whatnot for about 2 and a bit, 3 years before this happened. And I just said, okay, well, I'm all in. Let's just do this. So we started Titan Marketer, and never looked back. Never looked back. Have about 15 staff now all over the world. I've done international speaking all over Australia. We actually been invited to Social Media World Conference in San Diego in February next year. So we're going to that. I'm not. I'm a bit annoyed. My business partner, Ben, is. But he's speaking, not me. So yeah, a bit jealous on that, but it's okay. All about YouTube, man. All about YouTube. Like, it's just, there's just such a lack of I wouldn't say transparency, but like a lack of knowledge going around in regards to YouTube advertising and how amazing it is. Mm-hmm. And so, especially here in Australia. So when we saw this like few years ago, because we've been doing YouTube ads for quite some time, but when we saw the lack of resources here in Australia as far as YouTube advertising go, we're like, dude, this is a gold mine. Like, so we jumped all over it, and that's all we do now. Is just we just teach business owners, particularly service-based industries looking for leads, how to grow using YouTube ads, and that's all we do. That's all we do, and I love it. It's great. It's fantastic, and that's a little bit about me. So I've been married for 18 years. I got 4 kids. What else? I love long walks to the beach, fishing.
I'm going to say fishing. Just not forget about the fishing part, right?
Fishing, diving. I'm a fish. If I could be something else, I'd be a fish.
So would it surprise you if I told you that I've already had a conversation with Benjamin, better known as Ben Jones, your better half counterpart, business partner?
That wouldn't surprise me. That wouldn't surprise me because there have been a couple of times where he's been on podcasts and then they booked me as well. So it's not the first time that's happened. Not the first time it's happened.
Okay, well, would it be surprising if I told you that I actually spoke to Sherry Jones and Ben Jones at the same time?
Oh, you spoke to Sherry, did you? So you would have spoken to her about youth and business, I imagine.
Yep. Her nickname is the Kidpreneur Boss. And I had
The
an interview with
kidpreneur
her.
boss.
Yes. And I had her on maybe about a couple weeks ago. So I actually, at the end of that show, Ben came on. And so I had a
Oh,
conversation. So it was that's why I was asking you before the show, like, how did you find us? And it was like you didn't realize that they found me a different way and you found me a different way. So it just kind of goes into like the social media marketing is like it does work. And again, you guys are like halfway across the world and you both ended up on the podcast within a month. So it's definitely
yeah.
brilliant, right?
That's
So
funny. That's
it's
funny.
funny. It's hilarious. And so one of the things I talked about with Ben that I want to talk about with you was like the cultural differences in terminology. And I think you referenced your company as being a bloody ripper of a company. Now, those in the US have no damn clue what the hell a bloody ripper of a company is. So I want you to kind of break that down and kind of itemize that out for them a little bit.
So, well, what a bloody ripper of a company means. So the word blood, like a bloody ripper, means like an awesome company.
Mm,
Like if I were to say, like, oh, that was a ripper of a kick, or
mm,
that was I was a ripper of a sale, or whatever. That means, oh, that was an amazing kick, or that was an amazing sale, or that was an amazing, ripper of a conversation. Right. That's basically it's Aussie slang for amazing, right? And then just to add the word bloody, that's always a bloody ripper. It's just like, that was just like, I don't know, like, what's the word? Emphasizing how amazing it was even more, you know. So us Australians, we add all sorts of adjectives to our words and whatnot. Usually, what we do though is we'll like take someone's name and like cut it in half and add an O at the end. It's like John-O, Steve-O, Dave-O, Marco, that sort of stuff. So
mm.
yeah, but that's what Bloody Ripper means. That's what Bloody Ripper is.
So I mean, I could tell that you're really like influenced by the culture that you live in. But again, you didn't start there. You started off in Florida. And the funny thing is, like I've read some things on social media to where your dad Lynn was like, well, I guess she's making you into a real Australian. You guys are riding on horses and doing horseback riding and all that stuff. Now I want you to kind of talk about that
Man, you've done your
transition.
due diligence, man. You've looked at my dad's stuff. Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So I want you to talk about that. Like again, YouTube is international. Like again, everybody
Yeah.
knows about Google, but again, coming from Florida to Australia, like what kind of differences in business strategies did you have to kind of evolve into?
Well, I never really did business. Like I moved to Australia in 2005. I was 19 years old, and I'm a dual citizen, right? So I was born in Florida, lived there 20 years, moved here, well, almost 20 years. Moved here when I was 19, and yeah, I moved here because my wife is Australian.
Mhm.
I came here for 6 months after high school. We dated, and then yeah, and that's when I started getting into my my electrical stuff. But as far as doing business between Americans and Australians, I have to say I so much prefer to do business with Americans than I do with Australians.
Mm,
Like because Americans have a very entrepreneurial mindset. They
mhm,
do. Whereas and they're just like, yep, let's just go. Let's do this. Let's just go. Like very confident, and you will find that sort of mentality and attitude here in Australia, but not nearly as often. So like here in Australia, where I'm dealing with Australians, they have to go away and think about it and ask their best mate, and then freaking have to wait another week and this and that. And I'm just like, mate, do you want to grow your business? Yes or no? like, this answer is pretty simple. You don't need a month and a half to make this. Like, what difference is it going to make in a month? Like, what's the difference a month going to make? So it's just the biggest difference in running a business here in Australia. It's just, particularly with coaching and what I do, it's just, as I said, the mindset of the people here, man.
mhm.
So I don't know. I love the mindset of entrepreneurial Americans. They just, it's amazing. It's awesome. It's awesome.
So I want you to kind of like time travel back. And now obviously you're saying that you came to Australia when you was roughly 19. But
Mm.
growing up with your dad and kind of looking into his history, I mean, he worked for NASA, still does. So I want you
Yeah.
to kind of talk about like what kind of upbringing was that? Because not the average kid in America lives in a household with someone that actually works for NASA. So I want you to kind of talk about how did that influence you to become who you are right now?
So I grew up with a single parent home. My mom and dad divorced when I was 91. No, sorry, no, that's 91. In 91. Um, and my mom moved to Australia. I stayed in America with my dad. Um, and yeah, he's an electrical engineer for NASA. And how that influenced me now, um, it's influenced me. That's a good question. It's My dad's not very business orientated, right? But he is very quite analytical
Mhm.
and very based on numbers. And so when I started running my own business, particularly doing like advertising and conversion and sales, you have to look at it very analytically, right? Usually in marketing, there's very little, aside from like messaging, but as actual numbers, you don't, there's no room really for emotion, right? It needs to be, this is what the data says. These are the facts. This is what the analytics say. This is what we should do. This is working. This is not working. Yes, I love this landing page and the images and the messaging on it, but it's not converting as well as this one, which may be uglier and blah, 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 blah. So as far as dealing with actual numbers, that's probably left a big impact on me. And my dad taught me a really great work ethic.
Mhm.
Like, I had to do chores around the house all the time, right? Because it was me, him, and two of my other brothers. And he worked full time, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday for the U.S. government. And so we'd have jobs to do. And if we came home and the jobs were half done, there were punishments involved.
Mhm.
So I had to complete jobs. It really taught me a really good work ethic that, when you start something, finish it and do a good job of it. Right. And particularly when I'm running my business and I'm dealing with clients and I start something with them, right? It is important to me to finish that and do a good job of it with them, because otherwise I feel terrible about it, right? And so then I feel like I'll get punished because like they may leave bad reviews or who knows. Like I don't want that to happen. So today's work ethics also taught me a lot, but that also had a lot to do with being raised in a single parent home
Mhm.
because mom wasn't around, so I had to learn to cook and yeah. But those are probably the two biggest things that really influenced my dad. How about dad's influenced me the most
Mhm.
as far as running a business.
Mhm. So, I mean, obviously, I think because of your dad, you kind of got into industrial, became an electrician because of that. And I think there was a picture, I think it was on either Instagram or Facebook, and you were working in a warship and you had like this giant
Yeah.
smile on your face. I want you to kind of like relive that moment. Like, were you happy doing that? Or were you in that moment of, okay, this is okay, but I'm looking for something else? And that's how you ended up becoming more of a marketer.
So that was taken during my apprenticeship when I was learning to become an industrial electrician.
Mhm.
So that was on the US, not the USS, the HMAS Warramunga. That
Mhm.
picture was. There's a warship, and then Australian Naval Fleet, and I was actually calibrating some diesel engine transducers, right? And at that point in time, I was blissfully ignorant. Like I thought I had a fantastic, I did have a fantastic job, right? I wasn't in debt. I didn't have to go to university to get my trade. I was getting paid at the same time. And I left my trade. Again, I didn't have any debt, which was huge to me. And I got paid really well so I could support my family at the time. And Yeah, that big smile on my face. I don't know. It's just my workmate Stephen Colgan was taking that photo, and I just had a big grin on my face. But it wasn't probably until my fourth year of my apprenticeship, maybe after when I finished my trade. So probably my first year out of my trade, out of my time. I started thinking about my own business, not necessarily where I am now, but like just the idea of being my own boss and making my own money and, doing my own thing. Because my friend Ben Jones, we've been friends for like 16 years now, somewhere on there. He had a book about becoming mortgage free by the time you're 40. And I was like, well, that sounds interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And it talked a bit about, running businesses and that sort of thing. And so that's kind of when that seed was planted, and then eventually started to germinate. But yeah, that's what that photo was all about. But yeah, at that time, I felt like, and I did, I had a really good job, a really good position for the experience I had and what I was getting myself into.
So I want you to kind of like recap everything we've done on this podcast so far, right? I mean, we've been talking for about roughly 15 minutes, and it kind of goes into a TikTok video that you were talking about the 5 main parts. We started off this podcast with a hook. We kind of slid into the elevator pitch. We just told you a story. So now I want you to kind of close it and talk about like how important is these elements in the storytelling aspect of creating content for YouTube?
It's huge, man. It's huge. Like when you're creating content, whether it's an ad or whether it's like YouTube content for your video, for like or content for TikTok or content for Facebook, whatever it may be, right? It's really important that you are able to speak to the biggest thing is, okay, so I'm most into advertising, right? So the biggest thing is you want to speak to your right humans, right? You want to speak to the right person. So people watching my ads or my content, I want them to be entrepreneurs. I want them to be coaches, consultants, service-based businesses who are looking to diversify the way they generate leads, right? I don't want someone that's looking for cats in a house or whatever it may be. Okay, so you want to have that initial hook that hooks people in, hooks the right person in, and grabs their attention, right? Because really, we are all in a battle of attention, right? We all are, whether you're a content creator, an advertiser, whatever you are, whatever you do, we're all in a battle of grabbing people's attention, okay? And so that's what the hook is supposed to do. Now, the elevator pitch, once you grab their attention, right? Now it's okay, well, why should I listen to you? What are you going to do for me? What's in it for me? Why should I give you my time, right? Because that's the most important currency around is time, okay? So what you want to do is then you want to then go into, well, this is why you should listen to me. This is what I do. This is what I have done. These are results that I've been able to generate. If you watch this content, right? So if it's a YouTube video, right? In this video, I'm going to show you, or you're going to discover how, you're going to learn how, boom, 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 boom. Okay. So you want to make sure that the human that you're talking, the person you're talking to, is going to understand that this video is going to be worth their time. Okay. And that way they'll stay and they'll consume your message, which is what you want. Okay. And so that's what happens with what we call the elevator pitch, right? And then you have the story, okay, which is basically where you deliver your promises that you made, in that elevator pitch. So this is where you deliver the value. This is where you deliver the entertainment, right? So like what's really frustrating to me is like when I go on YouTube, right, and just say I'm looking up my daily dose of news that I watch on YouTube. Right. I see a video and it has some, has a good thumbnail on it, and then some headline that says so and so goes crazy or loses the plot or goes off their face or whatever, right? And then you watch the video and it's like, well, they didn't lose the plot, right? So it's a bit deceptive, clickbaity. So when you're delivering that value, you want to make sure you're doing a good job of it, right? That you're entertaining or you're delivering the value that you promised inside the elevator pitch. Mm. And because that's going to build that relationship. That's what builds that relationship is you're giving them value for free. And now they're starting to trust you. Okay. And so then you go to the close. So in the close, this is where you say, look, if you want to learn more, if you want to discover more, okay, you can click here or in the description below or whatever it may be, right? This is where you get them to take action. You have a CTA and you call them to action. So for example, in my YouTube ads, right, that I create, on our close, we don't just say, so to discover how YouTube ads can, add an additional 6 to 7 figures to your business. So to discover more, click on the link below, right? That's a typical close that we will hear on a YouTube ad, right? What you want to do is you want to sell the click. You want to sell the close, right? And so, for example, in a YouTube ad, you'll say, as I said before, so to discover how simple YouTube ads just like this can add an additional 6 to 7 figures to your business, click on the link below, and you'll be taken to a landing page that looks like this, or then we'll show like an image of a landing page where you can watch this free training or book a call or register for our event or blah, 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 blah. Right. So you're actually selling the click, or you're selling them to take an action. Or does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, you talk about the CTA. So, I mean, obviously, like they're one and the same, right? The call to action is the same.
Correct.
Video, giving them an opportunity to then convert or take the next steps.
Correct. Yeah. So that's why having a proper structured message, either way it's for organic content or whether it's for paid advertising, it's super, super important that you have a structure there that's going to hook them in, qualify you, build that relationship with the viewer, and then get them to take an action, whatever that may be. Right. That's the whole point of that structure.
So I think that makes perfect sense. And again, all marketers understand that. And it's another element that we're going to dive into right now is essentially targeting the right audience. And there was another video that you was talking about the particular automation of YouTube ads. There's a feature that those ads are presented on mobile devices through mobile apps, right? And so, prime example, correct me if I'm wrong, like your younger daughter's names are Kate and Jane. Is that correct?
Correct.
Right. So let's say Kate and Jane, they're on their phones, right? And let's say, Emma, they grab Emma's phone and they're just working on it. They're doing whatever they're doing. And then they see one of your ads. They're unlikely to click on it. So I want you to kind of talk about, like, first of all, how does someone turn that off? And how does someone actually know that they're targeting the right audience with these ads?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I never, ever, ever advertise on mobile apps, ever, right? The reason being is for the exact reason. You have kids on there or people on there, usually kids, and they're just clicking away on the screen, like playing Fruit Ninja or who knows what, right? And then your ad comes up as a banner or something, right? And they click your ad on accident, okay? Now, that click is super cheap. It'll never convert, right? So there's actual, like what you can do is you actually go into the settings inside Google, right, for your campaigns, and you can actually turn off mobile apps. Right. So you can individually go through and tick off, okay, exclude all these different mobile app types. So your ads never show up on mobile devices. So not mobile apps. Okay. Or what you can do is you can just exclude mobile devices from your campaign. Right. But 80% of all traffic these days comes from mobile devices. So I don't really recommend doing that. Okay. So that's the way of avoiding mobile apps. So
So
what was the second question? Sorry.
no, I think you nailed it. So it kind of leads
Yeah.
me to another, like obviously in today's world, as far as advertising goes, there's Google, which is including YouTube, and then
Yep.
essentially there's Facebook and other social media platforms, right? As far as
Yep.
the big players go. So ideally, what you're talking about, you could also do that on Facebook ads, right? You can kind of turn off the apps, you can kind of isolate it, talk about where you want to target them, where they are, and all those other things. But there's a key difference between Facebook and YouTube, and it kind of goes into pricing. So I want you to talk about these price differences between these two models.
Yeah. So as far as pricing goes, it's really hard to say, oh, well, YouTube has better pricing than Facebook, because ultimately it comes down to one thing, and that's your creative,
Mhm.
right? How good is your creative, right? Now, if your creative isn't very good, so for example, on Facebook, if you don't have, if your copy isn't very good and you're not able to stop the scroll or slow the scroll down or grab the person's attention or whoever it may be, okay, your cost per click, the pricing is going to be very expensive.
Mhm.
Right. And it's the same thing on YouTube, right? If you have an ad where like the sound is terrible or the hook is bland or whatever it may be, because hook's the biggest needle mover in an ad, right? It's the biggest needle mover. So if the hook is terrible, it's gonna be expensive. Like your traffic cost is gonna be expensive.
Mhm.
Right. So is Facebook cheaper or more expensive than YouTube? It can be, but there are times where it isn't.
Mhm.
Right. So a perfect example is we have a client who was doing Facebook ads for an e-commerce product, which was like a carry-on. It's like a carry-on stroller thing.
Mhm.
They were killing it on YouTube. I'm sorry, killing it on Facebook, killing it on Facebook, right? And so what we did was we tried to replicate what they're doing on Facebook and doing on YouTube,
Mhm.
right? Didn't work so well. It didn't. So what we did is, okay, well, what we'll do is we'll now go and we'll build warm audiences with video, like a video ad funnel,
Mhm.
right? And then we'll do conversion campaigns to people who've watched so many ads, right? And then we'll do retargeting and that sort of thing. And so that's working fairly well for them right now. Okay.
Mhm.
But to go straight to cold audiences who've never heard of you, right? It just wasn't working for them.
Mhm.
So as much as I love YouTube, sometimes Facebook does work better, right? So yeah. Oh, so earlier you asked about targeting earlier. Sorry. So the one thing I really love about Google advertising, particularly on YouTube advertising, is that with the targeting, you need to understand that Google has mountains and mountains of data on anyone that uses their platform.
Mhm.
So whether it's Google, Google Chrome, or it's the Google Calendar or Gmail, or they use G Drive, or they're on their Android and they say, "Hey Google," right? Or they have locations on, or their website purchases. If another website has Google Analytics on it, which most should have it on, right? Google's going to see, it's going to see your IP, it's going to see what you're doing on that website, right? And they're collecting all this information, all this data, right? And so what we can do then as advertisers and marketers is we can tap into that data and we can say, look, anyone that has typed in these search terms in the Google search bar, okay? Anyone that's using these apps in the Google Play Store, anyone that is visiting these websites, right? So, for example, if you're a service-based business or a coach or consultant, whatever it may be, right? Who's your top competitor? Who are your top competitor? How many competitors do you have? Do they have websites? Are they sending traffic to it? So what you can do is you go to Google and you can say, look, Google, anyone that's visiting my competitors' websites, the next time that person goes to YouTube, I want you to show them my ad.
Mhm.
And now you have a tailor-made ad specifically designed to speak to people who are visiting these websites and what their needs, what their wants and frustrations are. Right. And so, and that like, there's no other advertising platform on the internet that has that sort of capabilities. And that's why I love YouTube. That's why I love YouTube, is because of all the data you have. Also, all the data all the data you have access to with your advertising. And so that's why YouTube, in my opinion, is next to none, because of the targeting and the fact that you can put a tailor-made message in front of that person and they can't do anything for 5 seconds. They have to listen to you for 5 seconds before they can hit that skip button. So that's why I do YouTube all day, every day. And like 8% of advertisers in the US are actually using YouTube. And most of the 8% are like your corporates, your big corporates, your insurance companies, and your, those sorts of things. So whereas everyone's on Facebook, man, everyone's using Facebook. Facebook's saturated. YouTube's a blue ocean.
Yeah, well, I would think the big difference between the two, I would say, is that YouTube has the one formatting. I mean, it's niched down. It's videos or it's nothing, right? So versus Facebook kind of use variety of different things. People that can kind of does not know anything about video creations could at least make a slideshow, could at least make
100%.
So I think that's more of the leading towards Facebook. So again, let's say we compare apples to apples. And let's say, it's to your point, the 5 seconds, right? I mean, obviously Facebook tracks 3 seconds, I think 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and YouTube does the same thing as far as the lead in. Comparable to those both, you still think YouTube has a more of an advantage because it's keyword driven versus Facebook is behavioral driven?
Yes, 100%. So Facebook is all about like behavioral driven. So what are their interests? Right? What are their interests? Now I'm not like, Facebook has its place. Facebook is, you can still get great results on Facebook. Don't get me wrong at all. We use Facebook for a lot of retargeting and a bit of cold audience outreach, that sort of thing. But with YouTube, you can do, and they're both interruptive based advertising, right? So Facebook interruptive, YouTube also interruptive. Okay. However, on YouTube though, you can target interests, but you can target people who have intent. Okay. So you can target people who are looking for certain services. Right? You can target people who are looking for certain services and they're in the top 10% of income household earners, or top 20% or 30%. Okay. And so now you're targeting people who can afford your products, that are looking for your products and they're ready to buy your products or services, what it may be. Right. So Facebook's only like kind of one level, right? One tier. YouTube has more like 3 tiers of targeting that you can actually do. So we find that the leads that come from our YouTube ads convert easier than our leads that come from our Facebook ads. And so that's probably the biggest difference between Facebook and Google, or Facebook and YouTube, is just the targeting. The targeting, and then obviously the way your message is presented to the viewer.
So I mean, it definitely sounds like Pepsi and Coke, right? I mean, obviously both of them are very similar, but one has a different, distinct taste that someone likes more than the other, right?
Yeah.
But they both kind of have they're both billion-dollar corporations at this point.
Yeah,
right?
That's it. And the cool thing is, right, is if you're doing ads on Facebook right now, and it does, on most cases, was particularly like lead generation, right? If you're doing lead generation on Facebook right now, and it's doing really well, okay, almost all the time, you can take YouTube and apply it to your marketing strategy, and it'll work almost straight out the gate. Perfect example is we have a client named Jono, and he does an online fitness education course here in Australia. He's doing Facebook ads for a few years now. And He came to us and he's like, look, I want to add YouTube to it. So I said, yep, no worries. We helped him with some scripting, we helped him with campaign creation, all that nonsense, right? Conversion tracking. Within 2 months, okay, he was getting 11 times return on his ad spend, right? And it was like super simple YouTube ads. But see, he was already been doing Facebook ads for quite some time. And so his sales process was dialed in, right? Sales process was super dialed in. So basically we just applied those learnings to YouTube, and almost straight out the gate, he was getting a pretty big return on his ad spend.
So I think we're diving down the hole. So I want to just dive a little bit deeper, just take it another level down the hole, right?
Yep.
So as far as like A/B testing goes with videos, like obviously most people don't have the budget to kind of create that many variables of videos to kind of test to see which video or which color shirt or which keyword or which phrase is going to convert better. So have you guys dived into like the AI avatar market as of yet to kind of create content at scale a lot faster? That way you don't have to worry about like the big explosive budgets.
Yeah. So what we do as far as the creative goes, we actually have a whole procedure on how to use ChatGPT 4.0, whatever it's called now, ChatGPT 4, of how to spit out your avatar, right? Create your avatar, boom. And then you take that avatar and you plug it into another set of procedures that we have. And okay, basically, we want you to create an ad script for this avatar. So you put in some prompts, boom, 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 and then boom, it spits you out like a heap of hooks, a story, an elevator pitch, and a close. Right? Now, and then you go through it, you make some little tweaks and changes. Like we sell it to copywriters, right? It would take a week or so for the copywriters, and then there's a lot of back and forth and changes and this and that. Man, we can, like today, literally today, Ben and I, we sit down today, we took a whole day today, and we literally spent all day just mapping out a ton of scripts using ChatGPT, right? Because we have another event coming up later in October in Brisbane. So we're mapping a bunch of ads for that, right? Whereas if we just sent it off to a copywriter, it would take ages and way more expensive, right? So that's how we go with the scripting, right? And that's the hardest part, the biggest part. Okay. Now, as far as like split testing which scripts work and which ones don't, the biggest thing, as I said before, the biggest needle mover in any ad is the hook. It's the hook. So as long as you have a really good story, like it's full of value, like proper value, and you have the elevator pitch where, your what's the word? You're pitching like I can't think of the word now. In the elevator pitch, you're basically just like qualifying yourself and why they should listen to you, right? The rest of the ad will be fine. You can keep that all the same. Okay. So what you want to do is you want to split test the hooks. So you'll have one ad with hook A, one ad with hook B, one ad with hook C, and so on and so forth, right? And then what you want to do is you just create a campaign, one audience, one ad, right? And you just put a little bit of budget to it. $5 a day, $10 a day. Okay. See if it starts generating clicks. Okay. So if it starts generating conversions. So now you then have a bunch of campaigns that each have one ad that you're now split testing between each other on the same audience. And you can quickly do it within a couple of days. You can quickly see which ads are going to produce better results and which ads are going to tank. And it's particularly through the placements. So you can view where your ads are being shown, right? And if you get some really low quality placements, that ad's not going to convert. It won't convert at all. Whereas if you get some really good placements, like more entrepreneurial placements or like news placements and that sort of thing, your ad will do pretty well. So you can quickly tell within the first 2-3 days if an ad is going to produce good results just by looking at the placements.
So I want to kind of just go back a little bit. Earlier on in this episode, I think you had said you were married for about 18 years, right? So I
Yep.
want you to kind of talk about you're a live wire. Like, I've been through all your social media profiles, and obviously, like you're always into something, right? The fact that you broke your knee, you hurt your knee, injured your knee jumping on a trampoline with your boys kind of just tells who you are, right? And pictures, you have like this devious look in your eyes. So how did you guys meet? And obviously, does she keep you balanced? Because again, like my wife, I'm ready to jump out of a plane right now. I'm sitting here twitching, but she's the one that kind of brings me down to earth on a daily basis.
Yeah. So my wife Emma, I couldn't do this without her. I couldn't do it.
Mm.
So when my knee got better, about a year and a bit after my knee got better, I said to her, I said, look, I could go back to work and I could be making 150, 60, $70,000 a year. I could be working, I fly away. So I fly away for 2 weeks and then I'm home for 2 weeks. So it's 2 and 2, right? I could make a lot of money, truck ton of money, good benefits, good perks, but I'm away 6 months of the year, right? Or I can keep doing this and building this, but I'll be home all the time, but the money in the beginning is not going to be very good. Like it's going to take a while for me to get to the point where I'm making a really good amount of money. And so I said, look, I really want to do this. I'm a risk taker. She's not. Mm-hmm. She's not at all. I am. And I said, look, if you want me to go back to work, like if you're just totally uncomfortable with this, I'll go back to work. Right. Because this can get very stressful. Mm-hmm. And then she was like, no, like if you want to do this, you go ahead and do this. But if it starts getting like ridiculously rough and the company's not working and we're not making any money, well, then you need to go back to work. I'm like, okay, I can understand that. That's fair. And so she's been super supportive the entire time. Right, like the entire, I couldn't have done this without her. Could not have done this without her. Because she deals a lot with the kids and household things. And she's a nurse as well. And so she still goes to work once or twice a week just to keep her skills up, right? Because if something happens to me and I can't bring home bacon anymore, right? Well, she still has skills necessary to provide for the family, right? So she still does that as well. Plus, she's able to, mingle with adults, every now and then. Yeah. So she's been huge in my business career and in my success. I couldn't done it without her. And yeah, we met 2004. I came here to Australia after high school. I saw her at church and I was like, oh yeah, she's cute. I should ask her out. So yeah, and that's what I did. And we hit it off pretty quick. We hit it off pretty well. And then I went home. I went home 6 months later to go on a mission for my church. And then after my mission, I was just like, no, I'm moving to Australia. I'm marrying Emma, and that was it. That was it.
I mean, I think it's a good representation of opposites attract. I mean, it was even a picture. I think she had on like work boot, Timberland boots, and you had on your Crocs. And your dad was talking all the crap about like, what is that on your foot? And you like Crocs are amazing, right? But again, in the same picture, your wife has on like work boots. So I mean, obviously, like you guys are polar opposites, which it's the synergies there. So I want you to kind of like dial that in on the other side, like with your business partner. Obviously, I would think like Sherry, she's into business, Ben is into business, you're into business. So the numbers are 3-1. Like how are you and Ben? Are you guys kind of opposite? And from what I can tell so far, you guys are very similar. You guys are on the same wavelength to a certain extent.
We are. So as far as risk taking and entrepreneurship goes and that sort of thing, we have a lot of the same core values, right? The biggest difference between Ben and I are our personalities, right? So I don't know if you know the DISC profiles, the DISC profiles.
Yep.
Yep. He's a big D,
Okay.
right? Like he is just, yeah, man, he's a massive D. I'm an I, right?
Really?
I'm an I with like a little d, like lowercase d, you know? Whereas Ben, nah, he's just, yeah. So he's fantastic with sales and sales strategies, that sort of thing. Fantastic with it. He's pretty good with messaging and like how to like he's not a copywriter, but he's good at structuring a message. Like this is how you should structure your message, right? Not necessarily all the words that are in it, but your messaging needs to say these things, right? And just he's really good at getting really clear as to the sales process, right? From ad to emails, follow-ups, calls, all sorts. Me, I'm good at sales too, right? I've learned a lot from Ben, like tons from Ben. I'm really good at sales too. But I'm more on the marketing side. Like I'm more about, right, this is how the ad needs to be structured to work properly, right? This is how we test our ads. This is how we test our audiences. This is all the conversion tracking, all that sort of stuff, right? The different campaign strategies, keeping all that organized. That's where my strength is, right? Because because Google's always changing, just like Google's always changing, right? YouTube's always changing, and so I have the patience and the willingness to stay on top of everything, whereas Ben doesn't. Ben just wants it now, right? Whereas me, I'm more patient. So, I'm in the forums, I'm in the different groups, I'm all over the place asking questions. If there's something I don't know the answer to, I go to a forum. I talk to people who might know more than I do about it, right? And so that's what I do. So I stay on top of all the marketing side of things, and then Ben's on top of a lot of the sales processes. And so that's probably the biggest difference between the two of us, aside from our personality. So I'm more outgoing and friendly, and Ben's like, Data off of Star Trek, so like he's just, yeah, he's not very friendly sometimes. He's funny to me. He's a good guy, but yeah, he has no problem speaking his mind.
So I want you to kind of like identify that. Because I mean, obviously, what you're depicting is some of the elements that we talked about earlier that you kind of got from your dad, because like your dad is highly analytical to a certain extent, right? And then obviously you have a creative side, which we haven't really dived into. So I want you to kind of talk about, if you can just choose 3 to 5 words to identify who you are, what would those 3 to 5 words be?
That's a good question. 3 to 5 words to identify who I am. Faithful. God-fearing. I suppose that's about one word, I suppose. Faithful, God-fearing. Husband, father, and faithful, husband, father, entrepreneur. Those would be my 5 words.
Which is definitely interesting. I mean, obviously you led off with like principles of who you are outside of the work environment, the 4 out of 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to kind of to dive into that from the perspective of if time travel is real, right? And I mean, I know you're a big Han Solo fan, so you understand sci-fi, right? So I want you
Yeah.
to think about it from a standpoint of if time travel was real and you can kind of go back 18 years, maybe 20 years, if there's something that you can kind of itemize or change or adapt, if you just have like a 5-minute window to talk to yourself, when would you go back to and what would you say to yourself to make everything happening now happen a little bit faster?
I would go back to myself when before I started my apprenticeship.
Mm.
And I would tell myself to focus more on how do I say this? I would tell myself to focus more on marketing and advertising, right? And learning sales processes, but more so, learning sales processes.
Mm.
Focus my time and energy on learning sales process skills,
Mm-hmm.
because sales process skills will always be in demand. Always be in demand. Doesn't matter what platforms come along, YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, whatever the next 20 platforms that come along, the ability to sell will always be number one.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's probably what I would tell myself to do, is focus on learning how to sell. And once you can do that, you can write your own paycheck. That's probably I mean, as far as business goes, like business stuff goes, that's what I would tell myself at 5 minutes.
So, I mean, I
and
love that
invest
answer,
in
right?
crypto for a little
Oh,
bit
yeah.
and then get out.
Yeah, in the early days, for sure. For sure. So, thinking about like what you just said, and let's say a listener is listening right now, right?
Yeah.
And again, obviously, like behind you, those are looking at the video can obviously see that you have a bookcase behind you. You're very astute, and you're saying that you would dive more into sales, you would dive more into marketing, you would dive into that realm if you had that
Yeah.
5 window. What books would you recommend that you've read in the early days or that you're reading now for that listener to go pick up?
So books for back then or books now?
Either one. Like as far as if
Okay,
you had an
so
opportunity to read the book, and again, you have then and now, which would that book be for you and for them?
man, so I would read No Excuses by Brian Tracy.
Okay.
I would read How to Win Friends and Influence People. Everyone, I don't care what you do. If you're an employee or an employer, whatever, How to Win Friends and Influence People, in my opinion, is probably one of the best books ever.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Every high school student should read that book. And then I would read Sell or Be Sold by Grant Cardone. I would read, I forget what it's called, but it talks about the difference between a good company, a good business, and a great business. I forget what it's called. And then I would read Alex Hormozi's $100 million offers book. Okay. That book is awesome. Right. And then I would read I would tell him to read Alex Hormozi's $100 million lead, or $100 million, I think it's called $100 million leads book. Like I've read half of that already. And within like the first 2 chapters, I was just like blown away. What else would I read? Those are probably the main ones that come straight to my head without thinking
Yeah.
too much into it. Those are the top ones that come to my mind. Yeah.
Okay.
And Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki.
Okay. So like going back into the original format, like, with the hook and the story and developing out, like now I want you to talk to that listener and give them words of wisdom, being that if you were in their shoes and having opportunity to time travel back, you would look at sales and then you would read these books. And now part 3 is like their story. They're going to hit hurdles, right? And as they hit in these hurdles, what words of wisdom would you instill in them to make them, understand that whatever they're doing, then they can kind of achieve more and be more successful if they stick to it?
So the question was, what words of wisdom would I give to someone who's going through what I'm going through right now?
Or at any time, like they may be listening to you right now and saying, wow, I love this thing. I want to get into this. I want to get into marketing. I want to read these books. I want to learn more about sales. I'm taking what Marcus is telling me. But before they do that, you have to let them know that, okay, you're going to hit hurdles, but this is the words I want you to listen to make sure that you overcome those hurdles.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Easy. So when you get into this business of sales and marketing, right, it can become very lucrative, right? It's not overnight, like not even close to overnight. Like I'm talking years, right? Years. And so if I could go back and redo it, the first thing I would do is I would get into sales. I would get a job in sales, right? And learn how to sell. Okay. I would read every single book that I could on about sales, and I would continually be pushing myself to learn how to sell, and learn how to generate traffic, right? What are different ways to generate traffic, right? And it will be rough. Like it will be rough because no one's going to know who you are. Like if you go in for yourself, if you're running your own business, no one knows who you are. When you first start, no one knows who you are, right? Your competitor probably does spend more time advertising, because they have more money to spend, have more capital. They already have a fan base, a client base. And so it's going to take time. It's going to take time to get to that point. But you just got to keep pushing. You just got to keep going and keep going, and don't get shiny object syndrome, right? So this is what happens, right? Someone gets an idea, right? They start here. Someone gets an idea, and they're all excited about it, right? And they get all excited about it, and then what ends up happening is they start getting into it, and then they start hitting hurdles, right? And then they just lose interest because it's become hard for them, right? So now they're down on the other side of the bottom of the bell curve. And then what happens? They get shiny object syndrome, right? And they try something else. And where they start at the very beginning again. And it's the same process over and over and over again because they don't stick to the same thing, right? Whereas what you do is you learn from your mistakes and then you start again. And then you learn from mistakes, and eventually what's happening is you keep going at the same thing, right? That's when you start making money, right? So the pain you go through in the beginning and the mistakes that you make in the beginning, right, will help you make immensely more money later on down the track, as long as you keep sticking to it. And you don't fail. You don't, like, I know this is like what every mindset coach says, but it's true. You only fail when you quit. If you don't quit and you keep going, then you will succeed. It's just a matter of time. Right. So I don't know. That's probably the biggest thing I would say is, just it will be rough, but if you keep going and you don't quit, you'll come through with it. And that's when you can start making a better life for yourself, a better life for your family, where you can afford to have real freedom in your life. But you have to go through those trials and tribulations and sweat and blood and whatnot before you come out the other end.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone goes through it. Everyone's gone through it. Everyone's gone through it.
Yeah, I think that's definitely well said, and it kind of then leads into, again, I like the fact that we're establishing like the formula, and I want to like make these live examples of what you're talking about. Then we're gonna go into closing out with the call to action, right? Like, how do these people, if they want to work with you, how would they get in contact with you?
Yeah. So look, like if you guys are already, if you already have a sales process that's working, if you're already doing Facebook ads, or you maybe even doing Google ads or whatever type of advertising, like cold audience advertising, and you want to, utilize YouTube advertising, then diversify your marketing strategies with YouTube, just visit titanmarketer.com. Okay. And you can book a call with us. Otherwise, you could probably email me, which is, I have email at marcus@titanmarketer.com. You just email me. And that's probably the best way to do it. Either go to our website or just straight up email me.
Very cool. Very cool. So kind of going into a couple questions in our bonus question, right? I think this question will be definitely influential to this person as well, coming from who you are, being that you were in US and Australia, so you have more of an international viewpoint. But if you could spend 24 hours with anyone, and this person could be someone that's dead.
Oh, you there?
Yeah, it was just
Yeah,
weird.
you froze. You froze.
Yeah, I was looking. I was like, "Is he hearing me? I don't know." Well,
Yeah, no, I didn't hear you.
let me repeat the question. So, if you could
Yeah.
spend 24 hours with anyone, dead or alive, right, and it could be someone that's from your past, someone that you've never met, someone from your present, whoever it may be, who would you like to spend that 24-hour window with, and why?
Oh man. 24-hour window.
Yep,
That's a tough one, man.
it could be anyone.
But there's two things. Like there's a business side of me, but then there's also like the religious side of me.
Mm-hmm.
I'll keep it the business. So if I can spend 24 hours with anyone, it would probably be man. For me, it's a toss up between Dale Carnegie. I think it's Dale Carnegie. It was Andrew Carnegie. I can't remember. Be Carnegie or it'd be Alex Hormozy.
Mm.
Those would be the. Oh man, that's a hard one though. I'd probably stay with Alex Hormozy.
Mm.
I'd probably do with Alex Hormozy because I just consume his content like nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
Like I just probably Alex Hormozy. If I'm just sticking to the whole business, just talking business, Alex Hormozy, because he's probably been the biggest influence on me as far like recently, as far as applying the principles he teaches into my business and then seeing results.
Mm-hmm.
That's been the biggest impact recently. So probably Alex Hormozy.
I can see that. I mean, Alex is kind of like the Russell meets Gary V meets his like Tim Ferriss all into right now. Like,
he's just awesome. I don't know. He's just down to earth. Like I don't know. Like I just see him what he wears. Like he wears like a tank top with short tight shorts and socks with Crocs. I'm just like what?
Yeah.
I don't know. I really like his attitude, his ethics, the way he presents himself, and he just gives freely. He just says, here you go, gives freely of all this amazing information, and then helps you get to a certain point, then says, hey, you want to work with me to get to, get to the next level. I don't know. I could spend 24 hours in for sure.
Yeah, it makes sense. And to his credit, he's the first person that I've seen in the digital marketing space as high up as he is with a full-blooded beard as well. So I definitely
yeah. Oh, I get beard envy. I can't grow a beard. I can, but it's like super patchy and it's my beard sucks.
Well, I mean, there's always workarounds for that, right? I mean, so going into closing, right? I mean, I think we're kind of over an hour, and I think this was well worth it. So I don't want to hold you too much longer, but I like to give whoever I'm interviewing an opportunity to become the host of the Boss Uncaged podcast. So now my show is your show, and I'm your guest. Do you have any questions for me?
I suppose my questions for you would probably be with how long have you been doing your podcast for?
Right at 3 years.
3 years, yeah. What made you want to start doing a podcast?
I've been a marketer, and I've been into digital strategy and into web development and graphic design forever. Make a long story short, I almost had a near death experience. I almost died literally, and it took me about 18 months to make a full recovery. And coming out of that recovery it's kind of when me and my wife had the conversation about what was I going to do moving forward, much like what you were saying with your wife. And she was just like, well, it's time for you to brand you, right? Like, you've been branding everyone else. Take this opportunity to kind of recoup and figure out a strategy to brand yourself. And at that point in time, I was like the guy behind the curtain helping everyone else. And I was like, okay, well, I could either become a YouTuber, right? Or I could become a podcaster. And because I was more like not, I am an A-type personality, but not A-type personality at that point in time, right? So I was like, all right, well, I'll just be a YouTuber, just be my voice, not my face. And obviously the rest is history, but that was the kind of the turning point. Took me about 18 months to make a recovery, and I started a podcast in February of 2020.
Yeah, right. Okay. So why did you decide to go podcast and not YouTube?
Again, it was just kind of like imposter syndrome. Like, again, I was always the guy behind the curtain. I was never really the guy in front of the camera. I never really wanted to be the guy in front of the camera. And honestly, it was some bit of fear of like being in front of the camera. And I was like, well, they could just hear my voice, whether they like it or not, then, just leave it at that. But I mean, now I'm in front of the camera all the damn time. So 2020 in hindsight, it was like, maybe I should start a YouTube a little bit earlier, but our YouTube channel is monetized, and it took me about a year to figure out the formulas to get the podcast into YouTube and strategize both of them at the same time.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what, like with your podcast, who's like your target avatar? Who's your main target that you want to get your podcast out to, listen to your podcast?
I think it's twofold, right? I mean, obviously, it's highly successful individuals like yourself are more so in the front end of the podcast. Those are the people that we're interviewing and telling their stories. And I would say the listeners are people that are successful, but are looking for greater successes, right? And hearing your stories and hearing your hurdles and what you've overcome, they can see the similarities, and they may take that $1 million company to $10 million by either reaching out to you or listening to your story or hearing how you changed this or how you dialed in on YouTube and taking the effects, much like you said with Alex. But again, I'm doing it with, I've interviewed close to 400 plus people at this point in time. So if you're listening to all these episodes, you get a little bit, right? And it's organized in the sense to say, hey, if I want to look for a keyword of this YouTube, well, I've interviewed, let's say 6 people from YouTube, then you can kind of dial into those episodes and listen to the nuances of what they're saying, how they're saying, what they did and why they did it, and take take action.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yep. And so what's like with your podcast, like what's the end goal? Like what's your end goal with, I mean, obviously if you don't have a destination you want to get to, right? Like what's the point of the journey? So like what's your main goal for this podcast?
Yeah, I mean, originally I started off with kind of thinking about what I did before with my other businesses that I've owned. And it was kind of like, okay, we have businesses that were working, they were making money, but I almost died. and what was I leaving behind? I wasn't really leaving behind the messaging. I wasn't really leaving behind the steps and procedures on how to do particular things. So at this point in time, with the Boss Uncaged brand and the umbrella of all things that we have, it's more so breadcrumbs, not for you or for I. It'll be more so for your kids and your kids' kids, right? So they could kind of listen back and listen to Marcus, their grandfather, and hear how he started these things with YouTube and how he did what he did and inspire them for down the road. So I don't necessarily see it ending per se, because I'm creating content until my last breath. That's just the way I look at it. It's like, if I can create enough content and reach enough people, there's 8 billion people in the world. If I could just reach 1 million people and then let the compounding effect work for itself, then, essentially it will live forever.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Okay. Okay. No, cool. There's probably all the questions I have right now, really, like off the top of my head.
Cool. Cool. Well, I mean, with that, I mean, I definitely appreciate you. I mean, I think it's a small world, even though like we're like what 13 hours apart. And it's like right now it's like what 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock your time PM.
Yeah, it's 9, 9:15 in the
Yeah.
morning, 9 at night on Tuesday.
Yeah, which is definitely crazy considering that, I've had your counterpart's wife on the show within a couple of weeks. So it shows that marketing works. And I definitely appreciate everything that you delivered to the audience today. I think that you brought a hell of energy, like a lot of energy, a lot of insight, a lot of things that people should stop and really think about and then take action on. So I definitely appreciate you being here today.
No, thanks.